Here's a quick trick to understand yourself and others better. Replace the word ego with protective mechanism. Let's see how this goes with a few famous quotes about ego. In each of the quotes I'm about to tell you, I've replaced the word ego with protective mechanism. Notice how this shifts your understanding of yourself. Carl Jung once said, "The first half of life is devoted to forming healthy protective mechanisms. The second half is going inward and letting go of them." Eckhart Tolle once said, "Whenever you feel superior or inferior to anyone, that's the protective mechanism in you." Julia Cameron once said, "Perfectionism is our protective mechanism's demand. It denies us the pleasure of the process. Instead, we are told by our protective mechanism that we must have instantaneous success, and our perfectionism believes it, lock, stock, and barrel." Elizabeth Gilbert once said, "So whenever that brittle voice of dissatisfaction emerges within me, I can say, my protective mechanism. There you are, old friend." It's the same thing when I'm being criticized and I notice myself reaching with outrage, heartache, or defensiveness. It's just my protective mechanism, flaring up and testing its power. In such circumstances, I've learned to watch my heated emotions carefully, but I try not to take them too seriously because I know that it's merely my protective mechanism that has been wounded, never my soul. It is merely my protective mechanism that wants revenge or to win the biggest prize. It's merely my protective mechanism that wants to start a Twitter war against a hater or to sulk at an insult or to quit in righteous indignation because I didn't get the outcome I wanted. Robert M. Drake once said, "Imagine what we would accomplish together if we left our protective mechanisms at the door." Eckhart Tolle once said, "Protective mechanisms aren't wrong. They're just unconscious. When you observe protective mechanisms in yourself, you are beginning to go beyond them. Don't take protective mechanisms too seriously. Above all, know that protective mechanisms aren't personal. They aren't who you are." And Stephen Pressfield once said, "Our jobs as souls on this mortal journey is to shift the seat of our identity from protective mechanisms to the self." That's it. Now, here's why I love this word swap. Ego is a pretty loaded word. If you have an ego, that's assumed to be a bad thing in some way. And when you describe a part of yourself with a loaded negative word, you unintentionally villainize that part of yourself. Protective mechanism is not nearly so loaded as a term. A protective mechanism seems like a valid, normal, understandable kind of thing. And you can easily see how a protective mechanism is just doing its best to protect you. And you can simultaneously see that it might have become outdated or no longer makes sense in your current circumstances. And when you see a part of yourself as honestly doing its best and just needing a little bit of updating, it's way easier to change that part of yourself than when you're villainizing it. The first step to having less stress and more flow in your life is not villainizing the parts of yourself that are currently creating your stress. Every part of you is good. Every part of you makes sense. Every part of you is just doing its absolute best to keep you safe and happy in its own incredibly sincere way. So you don't need to change yourself. You only need to befriend yourself. And all the change that you want will unfold naturally and spontaneously from there. Can you make a seed sprout by breaking it open and forcibly yanking the plant out of the seed? No, of course not. That's insane. You make a seed sprout by creating the necessary conditions for its organic flowering. You don't really do anything to the seed itself. You just plant it in the right soil and give it enough light and water and fertilizer if it needs it, and then the seed takes care of the sprouting all by itself. This is exactly what you learn how to do with yourself in my course and coaching program, Less Stress, More Flow. In my program, you will learn a simple, repeatable, step-by-step process to cultivate an internal condition of self-friendship. That's the soil and the water and the light that you need. Now it's going to take a few reps to figure out how to do this consistently. And don't worry, I will be right there with you with as much coaching and support as you need while you're learning how to do this. But once you learn how to create those internal conditions for yourself again and again on a repeatable basis, everything else flowers spontaneously. And you'll spend a lot less time feeling stressed out and a lot more time in flow. Join the program waitlist today at the link above. This is the critical toolkit for living the life you actually want to live, and I don't want you to go even one day without it.